My love affair with search has changed.
I don't think, and we would say this being an agency, that an SEO's job is ever done. It's not.
The landscape and technology over the years has always increased, but certainly over the last 2 years it's skyrocketed.
I've seen huge change over the 10+ years I've been doing SEO. Back then it was pretty straightforward.
Well, I've done SEO, I'm doing SEO, why aren't I seeing results?
If we go back as far as 2015, the mobile update, 2019 BERT update, then we've got AI, TikTok, the search landscape, and social. The whole thing is changing.
I hear agencies now, I had some clients saying, I don't really worry about search now, and I go,
So strategies in SEO can often take various forms. Clients have different levels of expectations with when they can expect to see results. You have technical content, on-site, off-site. Where is a good place to start, would you say, Dale, with forming an SEO strategy?
Always starts with the client, their challenges, their KPIs. What are they looking to get out of SEO and search? It is next to impossible to just dive in the deep end head first and pull decent results. You've always got to get to know the client, get to know the business, get to know the industry. What is their challenge? Is it general exposure? Is it leads? Is it revenue? Where does the business want to be in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time? Without knowing the answers to these questions, in my opinion, I think it's very hard to build an SEO strategy. The last thing we want to do as a team and as an agency is push those vanity metrics in front of a client. We got you this many impressions this month. These many users searched this term, landed on your website. But what does that actually mean to the business? Did they get much revenue from that? If the answer is no, then we're not doing our job. It's not a good strategy.
And to add to that, Andy, often clients come with history of SEO.
Yeah, I think Dale's right in terms of understanding the client. But for the years that I've been kind of in SEO or in the industry, I think there's a real clear need to make sure that we understand the current situation, because if expectations are not aligned, and we hear it a lot, we've been working with this agency, it's not working, and they said they were going to get performance in 6 months' time, we're now knee-jerking, and we're not knee-jerking, we're now coming away, or we used to rank for this is the common one, we used to rank for this, we've seen traffic, revenue's dropping, how do we solve it? So I think understanding the heritage and the history of where the website or the brand has come from is a good place to start, as well as the kind of client. So, yeah. I mean, probably 50% of our work is audit work, not just for new clients coming on board, but even in our existing strategies, you're always going, where are we versus where we expected to be and what's realistic. And
I think the discovery and understanding to form that strategy is just as important, because most brands, unless you're a startup, they have some form of website history. They'll have some sort of SEO history, whether that history is untouched and they haven't really attempted it, or they've gone through all the trials and tribulations of penalties from 10 years ago to where they are today. And I think understanding that background, but also understanding the background and expectations of the client is incredibly important. And I think can results be picked up and actioned quickly? Yes. In our experience, you can look at a project and and kind of jump in. There are quick wins that you can have. We work with some fantastic brands, and for example, in the e-commerce world, if there is an opportunity to rank for a category that they don't have, often you can quite literally launch that PLP, that category page, and it can be ranking within a few days, reaching a new audience. But I think what's important, if you'd agree, Dale, is understanding the background and building a strategy based on the background, the pedigree, the history, and forming KPIs that can pick up and build on what that starting point is incredibly important.
Okay, so here's a thought then, because my love affair with search has changed over the years. I'm going back 10, 15 years in what we would call the good old days. Getting a client to page one, position one in most industries and sectors was an absolute game changer for revenue. Because of the way Google's changed the SERPs, it poses a different challenges for you guys as SEOs. So how do we think we can navigate that or handle that for a client? What do we need to do?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for yourself, Dale, but I've seen huge change over the 10 plus years I've been doing SEO. Back then it was pretty straightforward. You built the website, as long as the keywords were mentioned on the page, you could buy links, you could buy the authority, you could buy that position. The value of being in the top 3 positions was greater because there was less less advertising. They were higher above the fold. You would get, you could get more clicks, but the landscape has changed. Back then, that was the way to compete, and being the right result now, brands and SEOs and agencies, teams have to work a lot harder to earn the right to be there. So it's no longer a case of who's able to, game the system or buy links, which, back then we sort of knew we were doing as SEOs. But I think now earning the right to be there is the challenge and the sort of hard work.
Certainly. I think the landscape and technology over the years has always increased, but certainly over the last 2 years, it's skyrocketed. I mean, if we go back as far as 2015, the mobile update, 2019 BERT update, then we've got AI, SGE, TikTok, the search landscape, and social. The whole thing is changing, and you can no longer get away with looking through a single lens at search anymore, just looking at rankings. You have to be educated in all these areas, stay on top of your game. And if we look at user intent and the attention span of users as well, if we look at Gen Z, for argument's sake, there's now a higher percentage of Gen Z going to TikTok first before Google. You can't just look at Google anymore. You need to start looking at an integrated search and social strategy. One of the latest stats that came out was 51% of female Gen Z actually prefer TikTok and only stay on TikTok for their searches. And what's the reason for this? It's more relatable multimedia, it's more relatable news articles, it's more personalized to them. And if you're dealing with a user base, a customer base that only has an attention span of 2 minutes, and they respond better to video content, this is where you need to be optimizing. It's not rank 1 for buy new trainers. It is, how do I keep them? How do I entice that click? But then how do I keep them on the site and also convert them? There's so many variables to take into consideration these days.
And I think that's why I used the language earlier about my love affair with search has changed. Because I get that, and I get that when we have to sit down with a client, and we're talking about SEO strategy specifically today, but you naturally sort of get drawn into value strategies in terms of how do you get the most out of the marketing budget, right? But then we onboard a client, we change the website, we do a website migration, we do SEO, the basics really well. And then we get feedback from a client that says, oh my God, our leads are completely changed because we're back to position 3 and we're seeing a completely different experience and lead gen. We had a client we launched a website for in May this year. The last quarterly update has seen a huge improvement in leads because of search. So I keep getting drawn back into, do we need a search strategy? Do we need an integrated strategy? But every time we get search right, even though we talk about TikTok and we talk about new channels and new tactics, search still keeps bringing me back in as a really key tactic to driving revenue for a business. And I think if we get drawn into the debate integrated too much, and we go, oh, don't worry about search. I hear agencies now, I had some clients saying, I don't really worry about search now, and I go, I feel nervous because the data tells me, even though we might be in position 6 instead of position 1, like that, we're still seeing an increase in traffic, we're still seeing an increase in leads, we're still seeing an increase in revenue because our search is done well.
Yeah, I mean, SEO is huge for all brands,
Yeah.
I think. I don't think, has its influence, or should I say has its sort of ratio of searches, as Dale was saying, diminished over the years? Yes, perhaps. But, there's an e-commerce brand that we work with. They spend a fraction looking after and protecting their SEO than they do on their paid search. And, 40% of their revenue is driven from SEO, from the organic clicks. And, the way I look at SEO strategy, I think it really boils down into really 3 areas for me. You've got technical SEO, which is everything from the sort of the coding, the speed, the performance, everything that you work on with the platform and the developers. You've got the on-site or content SEO, which is the use of not just text but media and and sort of content to ensure that the intent of the user is matched by the content that you have on the page. And then you've got off-site SEO, which is the signals and the authority through link earning and citations that allow you to build up the reputation that allows the reputation to be matched with the right content, therefore the right result. Do you think, Dale, that different aspects of those 3 areas can vary for clients that we work with?
Certainly, I think it goes back to the start where we need to look at the challenge, look at the history of the website, what's actually going to drive results to the client. We've got a few examples from just the past month where we've seen real success from whether it's a content-heavy SEO strategy or technical SEO-led strategy. From a content perspective, as long as the intent on the page is right, the right content's there, it's got the right infographics, guides, it can skyrocket the visibility of a brand. And we've recently had a client that the exposure increased so much that actually they got spotted by the BBC once they reached page 1 and they got interviewed. And it just goes to show how having a content-led and content SEO strategy at that moment in time was right for that client. It may not be the whole time, but it was. And flipping it on the other side, another e-commerce brand we've got is purely technical, just some optimizations to the hreflang. We've seen their visibility spike across the UK, the US, Germany, and it just goes to show, as long as you understand the website, the app, the business, what the users are looking for, what are the challenges, the pain points, if you can create the right strategy, it will harness results for that client at that time.
You're right. I think it's the quick wins. It's, people often ask us, when can we expect to see results with our SEO and implementing technical aspects. So Dale's talking about, the hreflang aspect, allowing search engines to understand the website from different countries and distinguish the differences between the content. You can get pretty quick results. Often I find the results and impact that can take time is that off-site aspect of SEO. If you do some fantastic digital PR and the natural byproduct of that is links and subsequent authority, traffic and engagement, that isn't really an overnight success factor that we tend to typically see. That has to be part of a sort of longer term game. So if you have a technically fantastic, fast-loading website with great content that matches the intent and answers the searcher's query, there's only so far that can get you, because ultimately you're competing against perhaps other people that maybe have equally great content, but perhaps are more established or considered as more of an authority. So yes, you can have quick wins with on-site aspects, but it's definitely the off-site elements and the digital PR that can take a little bit of time to embed and then allow that sort of authority to rise.
There's as you're talking there, it takes me back to probably a conference 10 years ago, and still to this day, I think it best articulates the challenges of a brand with search. And this particular talk was describing search as the start of the Formula One season. Have I told you this before? Have you?
I'm riveted to hear it for the first time.
Brilliant. So basically, at the start of the Formula One season, all the teams get their car ready. So the analogy to a brand or a business is that's you launching your website, right? And let's say all 10 cars are new websites and have all done the on-site SEO, the basics, right? You go to the first track and you all run your cars and someone comes in first, second or third.
Yeah. Practice,
right? So you get your website ready for the race. The next 2 weeks, is it every Formula One? 2 weeks, is it, say you go to Monza or whatever the next track is.
Yeah, since I had children, I don't get to watch the F1 anymore, so you have to tell me.
So you go to the next race. The track is slightly different, right? So you need to adjust the car slightly different. And meanwhile, one of your team or one of your competitors has upgraded their aerodynamics. And then you race and you come in first, second or third. And then the next race is 2 weeks down the line. And the Formula One season is kind of like SERPs for me. Your position of 1, 2 and 3. Now, if you take it into the conversations we have with clients, well, I've done SEO, I'm doing SEO, why aren't I seeing results? Well, you launched your website a year ago. You got, at that point, your tech SEO was brilliant. But you're on a different track now because Google's changed the algorithm. And if we relate that to the world that we're in now with AI, with paid search pressures, with TikTok, the track is constantly changing, but the basics are the same, right? You need a fast car. If you're not at the race, if you haven't even got a fast car in the basics, which is your analogy with good tech SEO, you're never going to get in pole and you're never going to compete.
Well, it's the continual marginal gains, fundamentally. Yeah. Things do change, and with what I'm reading and hearing about the incoming Google search generative experience (SGE), people the industry is saying fundamentally you've got to be able to concisely articulate the answer if you want to appear in those generative results. You have to have a really good sort of simple, clean answer to the query and to the question, right? And so things are constantly changing, and websites are also constantly changing as pages, services, content, products change. That has to be continually refined and optimized. I don't think, and we would say this being an agency, that an SEO's job is ever done. It's not, because there are new challenges that are presented in order to keep race ready, if that's the right term to use to pair it with the analogy. But
I think the reason that it was kind of coming into my mind is that analogy was 10 years ago in search, and it's still applicable today. Yeah. And I think if we come back to the very first question, and the reason we've sat down and had this conversation is, how do you write an SEO strategy nowadays with everything that's, if you think about it like a Formula One start of the season, and you get your car ready, you get your team ready. Now you may choose nowadays, a brand may choose nowadays to not even enter the car into the race. They might decide that search isn't for them.
Yeah, or just pay for everything.
Or just pay for it, and that we use the language, that gambling addiction, to being, to buying the slot all the time. Which is why I think it's really important to continue the love affair with search, and to solve the problem and not be scared of the problem. Every business needs to enter a car. It's just where your expectation is. Do you want to win the race, or do you want to compete and be there and be visible? And I think that should give us some framework to have a conversation around what a strategy should look like.
Yeah, and it's our job to paint that picture for the client, isn't it? We need to be realistic with the client, go in and set expectations to say, these are all the variables we've identified, here's who you're competing against, this is the track you're now racing on over the next 6 months, this is everything you're going to need. But it's a partnership with our clients, it works both ways. And we can only do that through, like you mentioned earlier, constant auditing, constant working on ourselves, educating ourselves, reviewing the environment, reviewing the industry, and just keep taking each month as it comes and adapting to these constant variables and these constant new entrants into the race.
So I think in order to have a really, to have really good SEO performance, the key for us is understanding the history, the background, getting a really good discovery of the foundations that you're working with, and working out the right strategy across technical, on-site. What are the quick wins? What's the roadmap to unlocking that? And then off-site, what's the authority required to compete with competitors?
I just heard the word strategy there. The tactics and how we disseminate those and pull those together. But the realization for me is search is and will continue to be really important for driving revenue into clients at brands at all level, whether that's at local, regional, or national or international level. And very simply, you just need the right people around you to put the strategy together.
Yeah, and adaptation. It's adaptation to all the new variables that are coming into play, whether that's new channels, new Google algorithm updates, or new ways in which users are wanting to be interacted with and engaged with. And we need to finish with that.